Okay, Alan Rowland and another presentation about politicians from Jasper, Alabama and Walker County, Alabama. And in previous presentations, I gave you one on Tom Bevel. I gave you a presentation on Carter Manasco. But let's take a look at a person by the name of Carl Atwood Elliott. So I'm going to go to my camera. Let's see how to spell his name, Carl Atwood Elliott, U.S. Congressman. I'll share here with you a quotation. And this is from Carl Elliott. There were those who said I was ahead of my time, but they were wrong. I believe that I was always behind the times that ought to be. That's Carl Elliott. Let me show you what he looks like. Here's a photograph. There are many, many photographs of Carl Elliott. Quite a tall gentleman. And that's one photograph. Here's another photograph of Carl Elliott, wearing a hairstyle which is very characteristic of 1930s, 1940s. But let's get into our narrative here. And Carl Elliott was born on the 20th of December of 1913. His successor was born in 1902, I mean to say. That was Carter Manasco. But Carl Elliott was born in Franklin County, Alabama, a small community which was called Vina, or maybe it's Vina, but I believe it's Vina anyway. I checked on the population just a few minutes ago. The population is currently 300, and I believe it's 48 individuals. Population is down. And Carl Elliott died on the 9th of January in 1999 in Jasper, Alabama. He was age 85. Buried at Oak Hill Cemetery in Jasper, and I'll show you a photograph of his burial site and resting place very shortly. All right, the parents of Carl Elliott were George Will, they called him Willie, and Bertha Ella Lenora Massey Elliott, and one of his children would be named Lenora. All right, as we move on with our presentation, he married Jane Lucille Hamilton, and they had two daughters, Martha and Lenora. Lenora was a year ahead of me. Two sons, Carl Elliott Jr., he was several years older than me. And then John. John was one of my friends, childhood friends, also friends in high school and in college, too. John was 2 grades ahead of me, but I remember him very well. He passed away a few years ago. And for Carl Elliott, he graduated from Vina High School. As I said, it was in Franklin County. It was a valedictorian that was present there. All right, so he was from a dirt poor family, so there was very little money available, and certainly college was out of the question. But Carl Elliott was determined that he was going to get a college degree, so he went to the University of Alabama. He had with him $2.30 in his pocket. That was all into his name there, but he apparently befriended Dr. George Denny, Denny Chimes, Denny Stadium, and befriended him, who was the president of the college, and who gave Carl an opportunity to just work around the campus, do landscaping, start the furnace, clean up the buildings, and that's the way he paid for his college education. He became the first person to graduate from the Elliott family with a college degree, and he graduated in 1933. And from there, he attended University of Alabama Law School and graduated from law school in 1936. And I think this is rather remarkable. Now, you'd have to be a student at the University of Alabama to really understand what the machine is. And the machine is strongly controlled by the fraternities, by the sororities at the University of Alabama, some of the bureaucrats in the administrative offices, I believe anyway. Who knows? It's just a machine controls everything at the University of Alabama. They determine who your elected officials will be, and I'm talking about your college elected officials, like the president of the Student Government Association. That's a very prestigious honor. And Carl Elliott defeated the machine. He was the first person to do that, and he became president. And this is just a country boy became president of the University of Alabama Student Government Association. And I think that is absolutely remarkable, too. You will not find that happening today, I promise you, at the University of Alabama. But for Carl Elliott, he practiced law in Russell, Alabama, and then later moved to Jasper, Alabama, and there he practiced law. He represented coal miners, poor, disadvantaged people. And you'll see this always as a characteristic of Carl Elliott. He's always trying to look out for the disadvantaged person. Of course, this was during times of World War II, and I mean, all able-bodied men, young men at that time, served in the military. And if you didn't, it was just a rare exception to that. My dad was one that served. All of his friends served. My dad enlisted, was very proud of that, and he always held that up. And I was not drafted; I was enlisted, and enlisted in the early part of the war. But for Carl Elliott, he served in the United States Army from 1942 until 1944. He was the first lieutenant in the 79th Division and the 313th Infantry, but he was apparently injured in a training accident, and he was never deployed, which I probably was, thank goodness, he was not deployed to the Philippines, to the Pacific area, or to the European Theater of Operation, Germany, France. Later he was elected as a judge in Alabama, in Jasper, Alabama. I'm not sure what it was. He also served as a campaign manager for Big Jim Folsom. That's James E. Big Jim Folsom in 1942. And Big Jim was unsuccessful in that election, but he would later be the governor of Alabama. And I can remember my dad would always talk about Jim Folsom. He was not a fan of Big Jim by any means. And I was a little boy, but I can always remember my father talking about Big Jim Folsom drinks beer out of a rusty beer can. I don't know about that or not, but that's just what my father said about him. All right, moving on with this. And in 1948, Carl Elliott defeated the person that I talked to you about in the previous presentation, Carter Manasco, as a U.S. Congressman from Alabama's 7th Congressional District. His campaign platform was like the farm boy to Congress. And he would serve as a United States Congressman representing Alabama from 1949 to 1965. And that's remarkable, 16 years there. He served on the House Veterans Committee, the Education and Library Committee, the House Rules Committee, the Select Committee for Government Research. He was chairperson of that. And in 1956, he authored, I should say, the Library Services Act, which brought bookmobiles to millions of rural people. I can remember that, remember the bookmobile being down at the public library in Jasper, which today represents the name of Carl Elliott. All right, he was opposed to racial integration. He voted against the 1957, 1960, 1964 Civil Rights Act. And when you first look at this, you think, how did this happen? And you have to wonder about this, because he was such a supporter of the rights for the disadvantaged people. But why would Carl Elliott vote against the Civil Rights Acts of 1957, 60, and 64? And from what I can ascertain about this, he just believed that if we eliminated integration, if we had full integration, eliminated segregation, that this would bring about civil violence in the communities. I don't know. I had to think on the logic of that myself for a while. But he co-authored the 1958 National Defense Education Act, that's the NDEA, which improves science, foreign language, and technology education, and it provided for low-interest loans for needy college and graduate school students. And you can't help but think, when Carl Elliott went to the University of Alabama, he was virtually penniless, and now he's reaching out to support, needy college students, and I admire him for that. He was a strong supporter of the following presidents: Harry Truman's Fair Deal Program, John F. Kennedy's New Frontier, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. All of these are liberal programs, but nevertheless, he was a strong supporter of those individuals and their programs. All right, he lost the election in 1964. Tom Bevel became the United States Congressman for District 7. I didn't say that he defeated Tom Bevel. This is a complicated election in 1964. You need to go back and do your private research on this. But Alabama's districts were reduced from 9 to 8, and as a result of that, this caused one of the representatives to lose their position. There's no question about this. George Wallace got involved with it. George Wallace was not a political friend of Carl Elliott, I think anyway, and I think through the influence of George Wallace, it certainly did not help Carl Elliott in his election rebid, if you will. I ran across this. It's not appropriate, for this presentation. But when I was looking through all my photographs, and I've got a ton of this junk around my house. Yeah, but I was looking around and I found this likeness here, this photograph of George Wallace. That's his wife Lurleen in the background. And it's a autographed picture, best wishes here from George Wallace. And the only reason I threw this in is because I mentioned the name of George Wallace a few minutes ago. And while I was searching through that, I found another photograph. And Carl Elliott is not in this photograph, but we can see the president. John Kennedy, which is here. I just happened to find this. And in the background here is Lyndon Baines Johnson. I don't know what this group is here, a collection of women, group of women there. But John Kennedy is apparently signing some kind of a declaration for them, whatever. For Carl Elliott, after he lost the election, he ran unsuccessfully for governor of Alabama in 1966. George Wallace had been the governor of Alabama for 2 terms, and the Alabama Constitution did not allow him to have a third consecutive term anyway. And everybody thought, I remember this election, everybody thought that it would actually, probably, be Carl Elliott or maybe Jim Martin, would be the gubernatorial candidates there. But then the Wallace family slipped in the ringer there with Lurleen. And Lurleen, she was very popular. Of course, George Wallace was quite popular during those days. And Lurleen Wallace was elected as governor of Alabama. And Carl Elliott was out. And that election, really harmed him financially, because he put his personal finances into that. During this campaign, Carl Elliott stressed racial tolerance, and often his campaign posters would be defaced, disfigured. On several of his rallies there, the Ku Klux Klan appeared and they protested, so it was just not a very wholesome period of time. He returned to practicing law in Jasper, Alabama, writing books about local history, and one of his most popular was his 5-volume or 5 editions of his The Annals of Northwest Alabama, by Carl Elliott. And I have these myself, and I like this. I want to turn over a couple of pages here and show you a photograph here. This is several pages into the book showing you Carl Elliott. It shows you the contents of this particular one that I have in front of you here. All right, but anyway, that was that one. Okay, let's see what else. Sorry to leave that blank in front of you. And in 1982, Carl Elliott was awarded with the American Library Association honorary membership. By 1990, Carl Elliott became the first recipient of the John F. Kennedy Profile in Courage Award. He wrote his own autobiography, The Cost of Courage, The Journey of an American Congressman. Here's my personal copy of this. This is what it looks like. There it is there by Carl Elliott and Michael D'Orso. And I happened to look at this a little bit ago and flipped over a couple of pages. And I like this. I can remember this so well. This shows you Carl Elliott in this photograph with his family. Here is Carl Elliott. Here, his wife, Jane, is here. The older son here, who is Carl Elliott Jr., and this is Martha, and then my friend John Elliott, and then I went to school with Lenore. Lenore was a grade ahead of me. But anyway, you might want to put your hands on a copy of that too. All right, now I want to share a few other photographs here before I close out my presentation. And I just ran across these photographs. Here's one here showing Carl Elliott, if I can quit moving it around for you. And we can see Carl Elliott, he was quite tall. And there he is right there. And here's John Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy. And boy, I would give anything if I had my photograph with John Kennedy, as probably most of you would too. And here's another photograph, Carl Elliott, who is on this side here. Here's Lyndon Baines Johnson in the center here. And here's Governor of Alabama, John Patterson. I had the opportunity to meet him on several occasions. I always liked him, like John Patterson. And let's see what else we have. Here's a photograph showing you the Elliott House in downtown Jasper. It is a museum, To tell you the truth, I've been inside this house a couple of times, and even though it's a museum, and I think it's kind of run by Bevel State, you never see anybody there. There's never anybody that works there. I've never seen anybody there, and I walk by there or pass by there all the time. But anyway, I think if you contacted Bevel State, you could probably arrange for a tour, or at least be given access to the house there. Here's a historical marker outside the house, the Carl Atwood, Elliott, historian, lawyer, congressman. You can go by the house if you wish to do so, read about that. If you'll travel right down the street, just less than 2 blocks away, remember Carl Elliott was always associated with the libraries. So here we have the Carl Elliott Regional Library, Jasper, Alabama. And you can go down there if you wish to do so. I almost said something ugly, but I won't. And anyway, if you go to Oak Hill Cemetery, you find the Elliott burial sites there. This is kind of in the north central part of the, over near the woods on the northern part there, you can find the resting place of Carl Elliott and his wife Jane. Here's the grave marker of Carl Atwood Elliott, and here is his wife Jane, and Jane Hamilton Elliott. And so anyway, if you wish to do so, you can do that. All right, now that's kind of brings about a conclusion to some of our modern congressmen, if you will, congressmen from Walker County, Jasper, Alabama. We started this with Tom Bevel the other day. Then we went to Carter Manasco, not in any particular order, and now Carl Elliott. And at an earlier time, we talked about William Brockman Bankheads. Anyway, so Jasper has a long history of politicians. All right, I hope you appreciated this presentation. I thank you for watching. Thank you.